Hello, and welcome to Modeller's Monday Roundup, episode 13.
Hi everyone, and welcome to part 4. In this episode I'm going to be doing the chipping effect, which will lay down the foundations for the up and coming rust effects. So sit back and enjoy. To do the first layer of chipping I used pounds of grey and cold white. This was used to create the light scratches on the surface. You can use a sponge to create the chipping effect, but I prefer to use a brush. You get more precise control. When using the brush to create the chipping effect, you want to remove as much paint as you can on the palette, otherwise you're going to get chips that are like too big. If you can't find any reference photos online or in books, just use a bit of your imagination, just have a bit of fun with the model. Put your chips where you want to put them. As you can tell, that's what I'm doing. Now that you have your base layer chipping laid down, now it's time to move on with the still chipping. For this I use 2 parts light rust, 1 part German grey, 1 part AK drying retarder and 1 part water. To chip the gun assembly, I use 1 part light rust and 2 parts German grey, 1 drop of dry retarder and 1 drop of water. That's it for this episode. In the next episode I'm going to be adding all the rust effects, rusting up the exhaust. So as always, thank you for watching.
All of the parts are now laid out here. They've all been washed using a warm water with a touch of detergent. And then once they were washed, they were hung out to dry on the washing line, of all things. Luckily the weather's really nice. Once that was then completed, we gave them a good primer using a Halford's Auto Primer White. So now this part's all been done, we can actually start on the build. Okay, so we are about to make a start now really with the work for the big boy locomotive. Before I do go on and talk about the build, just a reminder to everyone who's watching this, that at the time of us doing this segment for the big boy locomotive, Ravel 187 scale, the kit is available from our good friends at Harrison Brown Models, their link of which is on screen now. So yeah, that's also where we obtain the kit from. So yeah, by all means go over to Harrison Brown Models, check out their website for this kit as well as many other kits that they are able to supply. But back to the build for the locomotive. We have placed quite a bit of masking tape over, as there's areas that we're going to have to paint up. This front area, these along here, on this top part, again the front, same for the other side, many areas have got to be painted. Although most of the locomotive is going to be black, these areas here are, i.e. such as here, the front, some of these plates, they're not. What they are going to be is some form of grey. And while we just quickly double check actually, just got to double check what grey we've got to use. It's a metallic grey. Well, an aluminium, sorry, an aluminium grey. And what we're going to use is a Humboldt colour, Humboldt 56. Okay, so grey has been, or the aluminium grey has now been applied to the areas it needs to be applied to. All the way round, I'll just turn it round. However, to get the final result, I'm going to actually give this a very light rub down using a 2500 grade sandpaper. Once that's then done, it'll get another coat. Okay, so grey areas have now been completed. There will be some minor touch-ups to do later. And now we've applied more masking, so we can actually now paint the rest of the locomotive body in black, of which we're going to use a Humboldt 33 for. Okay, so now the black paint's been applied, yes, obviously there are some touch-ups. But before we go on to the touch-ups, I should say, I spent a bit of time pondering over things and thinking about certain bits. Things just didn't seem right. And then I worked it out. First of all, the running plate here, and along with the cylinders at the front. The instructions say that it should be painted grey, but it just didn't look right. So I went and checked photos, time and time again, and actually discovered it should be black. So that's problem number one, which we will address and paint them black. As well as that, something else just didn't seem right, and it was this part that runs along the top, which is supposed to be some form of handrail, and again, just didn't look right, was not happy with it. So the plan's going to be, and if I flip it round, show you basically what I've done. I've cut it off, I've trimmed it off using a knife, and I'm going to replace it with some thin brass, and then hopefully repaint that, and that will again be black once that's put back on. So that's the first bit, finish. Now go back over this side, cut this one off, do any of the touch-up paints that's needed then. So we've done all the paint touch-ups. We've also now removed the moulded handrails, the poorly moulded handrails from the side of the locomotive. We would ideally want to obviously put some new handrails in. However, we haven't quite found any material to do that sufficiently at this stage. So we're going to leave them off for now, and hopefully come back to it at a later stage. But already there's an improvement without the old moulded versions on there. So we now put that to one side for a little bit. Won't be for long though, however. This is the smoke box door, so this goes onto the front. Before we do that, we're going to paint it. Most of it will be in the same sort of colour as what we've done for the front, which is an aluminium using Humbrol 56. And the areas of which have got masking tape applied, we've just put that masking tape on there, they'll actually be black using Humbrol 33. So let's get on with the painting. So the smoke box door has been painted up as required, and we've been lucky enough to get it to fit into place and glue into place quite nicely as well. So next we move on to the interior for the cab, the controls, etc, etc, which is this part here. There are some raised details of which we will address later, but for now what we're going to do is just give it an overall coat of black using Humbrol 33. So now with the black painted, this kit from Revell has actually produced some real fine detail with the cab controls and everything. And in fact, it's probably some of the best detail I've seen within plastic moulding. So all the fine areas that are raised out, they're to be picked out in red, of which we're going to use Revell 330, which is a very nice red. There it is there. But to pick it out without actually causing, obviously, any smudges over the black paint work, I'm going to use a dry brushing method. What that involves is dipping the paint brush into the paint, wiping as much of the paint off as you can onto a dry piece of tissue, so you've literally got such a speck of paint on the brush that it's barely noticeable, and then literally just brush out over the raised details, and the overall result should be just the raised areas coming into effect with the red paint. So let's see how we get on with doing that. Here you can now see the cab controls have been fitted into the actual cab body itself. It's at this point we are going to leave this for this episode anyway, for now. And then obviously when you come back and join us again next time, construction will continue.
Construction on the first part of the Hurricane starts with the pilot's seat. So I've got the sprue D with the items already painted. So I'm going to remove them and see if they need any cleaning up from where I've removed them from the sprue, and then we shall start getting them glued together. There's been 4 tabs of glue. The 4 little locating areas for the little pins, for lack of a better description, sticking out the back of the sides of the seat to glue it on to what will be the rear of the cockpit. I don't think that quite lined up. Let's try again. Yeah, that's all in okay. So there's our first part of the Hurricane all done. The next step requires the first of our decals to be applied, so we'll put this onto this component before continuing on with the building. Okay, so I've identified here number 2 is the decal we're after, so I'm going to carefully cut around it, and then we can soak it off of the backing film or paper and then slide it off onto the component where it's going to be located. I'm going to use the Humbrol Decal Fix to apply this. So I've taken the lid from my water container and I'm just going to tip a little bit of the Decal Fix or Decal Fix into it. There we go. I'm just going to actually use a paintbrush just to give it a bit of an angle so it sits in a little pool. Then we'll soak the bit we need. We'll leave that submerged for a little bit. I'll swap these over so while that's doing that I can use the paintbrush just to put some Decal Fix also on the part of the model where it's going to be located. Right, so now it's soaked for a little bit. Just going to apply a bit more onto the model. I can see that it's started to come off the bit of backing paper. So now I'm going to carefully see if I can get it to come onto the paintbrush. I'm going to put it, there we go. Now by taking it up the gradient, I can slide it nicely onto the brush to then move it over and then slowly, there we go, slowly let it sort of slide off the brush. It took a little while, sometimes does, and then I can just use the brush to slowly manipulate it into its final position, as the model component here also has some of the decal fix on, so it's not going to stick straight away. I think I might just try and slide it over a bit more central. There we go. Right, so I'll now leave that for the area to dry, and then once it's done that, I will just apply a little tiny dab more decal fix over the top to give a protective covering. But obviously I'll wait till it's taken to the model a fair bit more first, so I don't wash it off by applying the decal fix straight away. So while that dries, I'll cut out the other bits for the next part of the build, and then I can come back, do that other bit of coat, and then continue on. For the next step, I'm just going to glue the first bit, and then let that dry, holding it all in place before moving on to the second bit. Because this component, which goes across the width of the aircraft body, needs to glue onto two sections of framework, so I'm going to let it dry on one first before attempting the next glue. I haven't allowed it to dry for a little bit. I'm now going to glue it onto the other section. A little too much glue came out just then, so dab some away. And then in that goes. So this area here will be where the cockpit is. Seat will be in there. And these bits go out into the wings. So while that's drying, I can move on to the next step. I've dry fitted these bits together to see which parts of them make contact. Oh, there we go. Move some of the glue across where it came out a little too fast. There she is, I'll put that right down on that. There you go, so now I'll leave those bits to dry before I glue them together. So now that they've sufficiently dried, I can glue these two stages together Again, I just did a little dummy fit a second ago to see exactly where the bits went, so I understood. Bit of a fiddly task this one, because we've got to tuck under with the side there, but it glues on top. So get that lined in before it glues out too much, and then check that there is lined up, which it is. I've just checked a couple of steps ahead. I've just dry put on the other side just to hold it all in place to help the area we've just done dry, and then I'll later pull this bit off and then continue on with the other bits that go on in here before this actually gets glued on. But as it doesn't touch any of the bits with glue, it'll be safe there, and to hold it in shape while these bits here dry. Having left it a little while, let's see how it's now looking. So yeah, so that's all on good. Now we can continue gluing the next steps on. So this is now the next two stages that I'm going to be gluing on. I think I'll locate it into the little hole first, then down below. Like so. Okay, just those two glued in. Now I'll go cut out the bits for the next step and we'll get them glued in. So I've done a few more steps up to step 10. As you see, step 11 will require me turning this over, so I'm going to end it here while this all dries for this episode, and then we'll come back hopefully next week when we will start getting it to look a bit more like a hurricane.